Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in just a moment. Let's actually make sure that's the case. Hello, chat. It sounds like I am all clear. Oh, I need to do a microphone tech on my end. Testing 1, 2, 3. That's probably fine.
Okay, get that. Get that. Okay, you ready?
Just one sec. All right. Yes, I'm ready.
All right, I'm now recording.
I'm now recording.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 362 for March 27th, 2025. Hey everyone, Deanna Rubino here, joining Zac Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. And this week we got some news on, well, what else? Windows 11, specifically 25H2, which is, of course, part of that new. Well, it's not so much new naming nomenclature, but there's been some changes going on there. So we'll go through that. Also, we've been talking about the smaller Surface Pro and also a smaller Surface laptop destined for store shelves. And it looks like that's just got a little closer. So we'll give some news about that device to remind you what its specs are and expectations around it. Speaking of the Laptop 7, Amazon flagged it as a frequently returned item. So we'll go through what that could possibly mean, because there's actually a lot of possibilities there, including some theories on Reddit, I think it was, where what people are doing there, which kind of makes sense, actually. But we'll try to get to the bottom of that. Also, just a quick note that Google Drive is now available for all Snapdragon X Windows PCs. So this is the ARM64 version. I don't know, we need to go with much more detail about that, but the TLDR is it came out in November as a beta, but you had to go kind of search for it, find it, and install it. And now it is officially out of beta. Now, if you do have the beta version installed, don't worry. It will auto update and you'll just get the release version like everyone else. But to kind of recap, this is just Google's version of OneDrive, basically. And it's a critical app for a lot of people. If you use Google Workspace and your company, like ours, uses Sheets and Docs and all that kind of stuff, this is a way to sort of help manage and access that stuff. So for some people, this is a critical app. And from what I understand, the previous version wouldn't install on Qualcomm Snapdragon X PCs. So there's like no emulation at all. But now it's been written for ARM64 and should run great, especially since it's out of beta testing. And it's good just because this is one of those few like really important apps for some people that's kind of make or break with these Qualcomm devices. I personally have never used it myself, but it's clear that some people definitely need it, especially for work. So I think it is a good addition to it. In the article, we did highlight the fact that Qualcomm has a dedicated page up. See if I can find the address. But it's a dedicated page that covers all their apps that are available. And yeah, if you go to, it is qualcomm.com /Snapdragon/laptops and tablets, which is interesting, /Windows apps. They have a really nice page that kind of goes through and explains, about their chips and stuff like that. They have a quote up there that's actually kind of interesting. It's based on research from Microsoft. 90% of the total app minutes people spend today have native versions for the platform, which I think makes sense, especially since browsers are a big part of that. But if you go through the page, they have popular apps for home, they have productivity, collaboration, creative, social media. And it's actually really impressive when you go to see all this stuff, right? There's basically, as far as I can tell, basically all the major apps that people use on Windows these days. There's a lot of stuff for developers, of course. There's all the multimedia stuff like Handbrake is on there, Pandora Music, Voodoo, VLC Player, Audacity. So those are all done. Interestingly, for consumer antivirus, so you do have Microsoft Defender, McAfee, Bitdefender, Trend Micro, Reason Labs, Upsite AI, Norton 360, Avast, Norton LifeLock, Norton AntiTrack, and F-Secure, which is quite a lot of antivirus apps that are now compatible with ARM64. And for VPN, there's a bunch as well: OpenVPN, WireGuard, Surfshark, Windscribe, Viscosity, Norton, Private Internet Access, PIA, which is, as far as I can tell, one of the most popular and one of the most highly recommended ones out there. ExpressVPN, I've used them before as well. NordVPN, there's a bunch of them here I've never heard of before. Avast is on there too. So like, oh, and then of course, I think there's the browsers. I don't know if I think I skipped that. Yeah, so web browsers, it's everything. Chrome, Edge, Brave, Firefox, Opera, Vivaldi, and even Arc. So I would go check that page out if you're still on the fence about, Windows and ARM stuff. But I've never had a problem running apps. I've mentioned before, Photoshop is redone for ARM64, but I don't even use that. I use Photoshop Elements, which is not redone for ARM64, and it runs just fine on my Surface Pro 11 and other Snapdragon devices. And, this is something you and I have talked about a lot. I still see, I won't name this specific YouTube channel, but there's a couple that when they talk about this subject, they really give the impression that it's ones and zeros, black and white, meaning like when they talk about lack of ARM compatibility, they make it sound like, oh, so the app doesn't run on a device. Right. Whereas like the majority of apps actually will run. They're just not completely optimized. But due to the new emulation layer that's part of Windows 11 that launched with Snapdragon X, people are always like, oh, why can't Microsoft just do Rosetta 2 like Apple? Like, according to Microsoft, the performance between their emulation package and Rosetta 2 is equivalent, if not better, I've heard, than Apple's. And so the majority of apps, even if they're not rewritten for ARM64, either entirely or in parts of, because the development packages allow that now, these apps still run, and they run well. Partly because Snapdragon X, especially the Elite, is so powerful. Like, I know people are going to be like, oh, Apple M4. I don't, that's fine. But most people aren't daily comparing an Apple M4 laptop to a Windows laptop. Most of us are like, I had a Dell XPS 15 with a 45-watt Core i9. How is it compared to that? Well, it's faster than that. So it's like, that's kind of all I need to know. And it's also way more efficient. It doesn't get hot. I don't know. What are your thoughts about all that? Do you get that impression from a lot of people when they cover this topic?
Yeah, reviewers are quite bad at this. They will emphasize the lack of app compatibility without really delving into what that means. And it does sound like what Dan said. So if you take those statements at face value, that these laptops don't run as many apps as an Intel AMD laptop, and that's technically true. But in the majority of use cases, it isn't true. Like Dan said, most apps do run. I can run. Other than the apps that Adobe explicitly doesn't let you try to run on Windows and ARM, all of the apps that I use run on Windows and ARM, and they run well. XSplit, which isn't even natively compiled for Windows and ARM, works great. It was able to host the podcast when we did it on the Surface Laptop 7 before, just fine. That wasn't possible on previous gen Windows and ARM chips. It is now. Same with Skype isn't Windows and ARM. It is now, even though we're not using Skype anymore because it's dead. But that also worked just fine. All of the apps, Telegram, everything that I use, everything that, an Ultrabook class laptop would kind of want to run, does run on Windows and ARM. And, not all of it's natively compiled, but it does run. And in a lot of cases, it runs without any hiccups. I rarely notice any performance degradation between running XSplit on my Surface Laptop 7 and running XSplit on an Intel powered laptop of an equivalent spec. It's unfair to sort of underline these laptops as, oh, these laptops are incompatible. Now, in the cases where they are incompatible, which is mostly gaming or high intensity creative applications, such as a lot of the apps in the Adobe suite, yes, that is a legitimate issue. It's a legitimate criticism that it should be pointed at, but it should be explicitly stated in these reviews, in my opinion. When you do explain that these apps, as a reviewer, have less compatible apps that run on them, you need to explain what that means. 95%, 98% of the apps that you would want to run on Windows will run on this laptop, unless you are somebody who needs After Effects, or if you're somebody who needs some really obscure old app that may not necessarily run well under the emulator, then you should be more or less fine. I think, and this really came up a lot in the MacBook Air M4 review round recently. Lots of people comparing the MacBook Air M4 with, Laptop 7, including myself. And everyone on the Apple side saying, these apps have no compatibility issues. These laptops have no compatibility. If I could talk, compatibility issues. The M4 Air is fantastic. It runs everything. I would say that as for someone buying an M4 MacBook Air, everything that they would want to run on that laptop would also run on a Surface Laptop 7 with an equivalent app, of course. If it's a Mac only app, then there's obviously a difference there. But MacBook Air users, who are they? They're people who do email and entertainment consumption, web browsing, and maybe a bit of photo editing or video editing at most.
Surface Laptop and consuming 7, media, watching videos. Yeah,
Laptop 7 can do all of that. It can. You will not run into an app that the Surface Laptop 7 cannot do that on. If Premiere Pro isn't there is an alternative Windows app that will do it. So yeah, I just think it's unfair that all of these reviewers.
And the funny thing too is, it's Windows has way more apps than Apple does.
Yeah, yes, true. Yeah,
there's just way more variety. I don't know if all those browsers are available on Apple, but a lot of these tools are just they're not available on Windows devices. But yeah, we always joke around with the YouTube people. According to YouTube reviewers, everyone just sits home and edits video all day.
Yeah,
right. That's the only use for these laptops, and therefore, because they can't do it, it's a bad laptop, which is absolutely hilarious. And when it comes to gaming, the real big limit with gaming actually comes down to anti-cheat systems that are part of the game, which are in of themselves controversial amongst gamers because they can affect performance and they have all sorts of issues. On top of the fact, they also don't run on the Steam Deck, which no one really seems to care that much about, right? No one goes, don't buy the Steam Deck because it's not going to run this, because it runs the majority of every other game. It's the same experience, basically. But even that, Microsoft says it is working with those partners to bring those anti-cheat systems over to ARM64 and make them compatible. It's just a matter of time. So yeah, there are limits here and there, but for the most part, I don't know. So I guess, let's jump, since we're already talking about this, let's just jump to the Surface Laptop 7 story, since I think it's a nice segue. So you found this warning label on Amazon. I think it was only for one of the SKUs or something like that, but
it was a handful.
Okay, and it has this label. Basically, it says frequently returned item. I've seen that before too on some stuff. It's made me hesitate to buy. So the question, of course, is why, right? So is it like what we were just talking about? People buying it and oh, I can't run this really obscure app, which is funny too, by the way, because really obscure apps from 10, 15 years ago probably actually will run because they're usually smaller, have smaller libraries, and are more basic apps versus the more complex ones that are today. But is it that? Are people buying it and they're trying to, run, some one of those games with an anti-cheat system on there? Is it they just don't like the laptop itself, right? There's something about it. Or there's hardware failure issues, right? And then I guess the third one, if I'm correct, that some people brought up is because Laptop 7 has actually been out for a while with the Qualcomm chips. It's been over 6 months at this point, right? Almost 8 months.
Yeah, but June last year it came out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, June. So it's been out for a long time. So what's changed? Well, availability, the Intel version is what's changed. And according to some people on Reddit, a lot of people are buying both versions unboxing them, trying them out, and deciding to keep one of them and send the other one
Yeah.
back. And what they're doing is taking advantage of Amazon's admittedly very lenient return policy. Um, I went on a splurge, and I keep telling this story about I bought it's a $700 router that was on sale for $578. It's about the best Wi-Fi 7 router you can buy, and it just sat there. I never even unboxed it, still in the shrink wrap. But yeah, I had like 30 days to like return it, and I finally did. Although I'm still waiting on the refund for it. But like, they make it super easy to return stuff because you just click a couple things. And at least in the United States, I don't even need to mail it out. I can like go to Kohl's or I can go to Whole Foods Market, and they have a counter, and you just bring it there. And then I've talked about this deal before. It's almost like a little bit of a scam, but not really. When you bring something back to Kohl's, and it's really quick. They have a counter. It's Amazon. You just go up there. You don't need it. You don't even need to package it. It's just whatever it came in, like the box, whatever. But you don't need to put it into a box and seal it. They do all that for you. You give it to them. They scan it. They scan your QR code on your phone, and then they print out a return label saying, okay, here's the number, it's been returned. But they also give you a 20% off coupon for their store. That's like good for a couple days. And so like 9 times out of 10, I'm like, all right, well, let me go to the men's section, and I'll just find something on sale. And like if you do Kohl's right, like if you have their app and Kohl's Cash, all this, like you can really stack stuff and get like really big discounts. And so it's not unheard of that people, would take advantage of that. And Kohl's is trying to make it worth their time to do it. So I'm wondering, is that the explanation here, which I think actually is the more plausible one? I don't know. What are your thoughts about this?
I think you're probably on the money. I mentioned this in the article that I wrote that, let's consider the fact that the Intel models did just recently launch. A lot of people may be, buying directly from Microsoft for the Intel one, then grabbing a discounted Qualcomm one from Amazon, comparing them side by side, going, which one do I want? Ultimately choosing the Intel one, which still isn't good news for Qualcomm and Microsoft, to be fair. But choosing the Intel one and then sending back the Qualcomm one. I can't think of any other reason why it would suddenly spike like that. The timing of it just lines up too well, because you're right. The laptop has been out for, we're coming up on a year in a few months, and only recently did this label apply to a number of configurations on the Amazon US website. Notably, it is only Amazon US. I did check Amazon UK and some other regions as well, and I wasn't able to see this returned item label. Maybe it is a US only thing to begin with. I don't know. I wasn't aware of this program. I'd never seen it before until I'd seen it on the Surface Laptop 7. So I did some research into it. According to Amazon's seller FAQ, the label is applied to items with the highest return rates for their product category. They don't go into too much detail as to how they work that out in regards to the maths around it. So it could be, or whether or not it has built in like abuse defense system. So for example, you could be a competitive business, order 1,000 units and then return all 1,000 of them just to give let that product the returned frequently label.
There is a defense system in place for Amazon for this, but it's based on your account.
Right.
Basically, you can get flagged if you return too much stuff, because there have been people who will do this for like all sorts of categories, especially clothes. They'll buy a bunch of things, different sizes, it comes in, and they just return it. And the controversy with Amazon is a lot of stuff that's been opened or closed or something that's tried on, they don't resell it. A lot of times they throw it away.
Right, yeah. And so this gets into the why does Amazon even have a label such as this? It is to reduce people buying products that need to be returned. So it's supposed to be there to stop to sort of highlight bad products. I do think it's being unfairly used here on Laptop 7, because I called the Laptop 7 the best laptop period last year, and so for it to be considered not good on Amazon is something's not adding up here. And you're right, the reason it does exist is because returning products to Amazon, I'm sure it's more than just Amazon, but as we're talking about Amazon, we'll use Amazon here in this case. In the subject with the context of Amazon, it's really bad for the environment. A lot of the things get thrown away, or they don't get packaged up to be sold again. It's like it's not good, and for the current condition of global warming and stuff, it does need to be improved.
Yeah, and Best Buy has a similar, in order to compete with Amazon, especially if you're a Best Buy member and even just a free member, you get extended return policies and they're very lenient. It's the same thing. You just go to your account, hit return, and you can start the process. You just go bring it in. To Best Buy's credit, they sell a lot of products. They have an open boxed section like below the product, and they even rate it, good, excellent, fair, and you can see the discount. You can get a pretty significant discount. So if you don't mind, getting a laptop that was opened and returned and is in excellent condition, but you can save $100 on it. Sometimes it's often worth doing it, but Best Buy obviously keeps local stock and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, and to be fair, Intel Lunar Lake has gotten a lot of favorable reviews. I'm reviewing a laptop right now. I mentioned it before, the ThinkPad X9 15. It is a very good chip, and it can get very good battery life, depending on the laptop, so long as they're not, cutting back on the battery size. I still personally, though, in my experience, find Qualcomm Snapdragon X Elite chips the most responsive. In other words, when I click apps and open them, like I don't, there's like no delay when it comes to it, especially browsers. Everything just works, is a little bit more snappy. And I think it's also because the Qualcomm chips have more cores on them, compared to the Intels. But in terms of battery life, on this 15-inch ThinkPad X9, I'm easily pushing 10 hours, sometimes even more. And so it's like the Intel version of the Surface Laptop 7 is solid. Like, it is a really good one. I would still prefer the Qualcomm model. But if like you want it to run a specific app or play a specific game, or you just don't want to necessarily take the risk and you feel like, oh, the Intel version's good enough for me, you may play it safe that way. So I think this is one reason, of course, Microsoft has limited the Intel version to technically, as a business device, and not, they don't put it on the shelf right next to the Qualcomm version, like pick your poison,
Because it is one of the cases where the difference between the two is so negligible. Like, the battery life is more or less comparable. Performance is a little bit better on the Qualcomm, but it's not by much. And in day-to-day tasks, you likely won't even notice it. GPU and gaming will obviously be better on the Intel one because it is Intel and its native games are natively compatible for it. And the GPU on Lunar Lake is surprisingly good versus the Qualcomm GPU, which isn't as good as it could be, I don't think. But the Intel one will run hotter. The fan will kick in more versus the Qualcomm one, which basically runs silent and it's as if it doesn't have a fan. So, so there are comparable, one-ups here and there, but overall the products are more or less the same. And so it does make sense that Microsoft did separate them, because it is confusing for an end user to, imagine somebody who isn't really into technology, who wants to buy the latest Surface laptop. Imagine walking into a Best Buy and being presented with two different options. Why go with either one? It's like, it doesn't make sense to have them competing side by side on store shelves. So that's probably why it isn't. And that's why they've separated it for now. I did reach out to Microsoft, see if they would comment on this. They chose not to. So we're not going to truly know what the real reason is for these returns, but I'm almost certain Microsoft will be looking at the data to figure out what's going on there, whether it is just a blip, and maybe they will be in contact with Amazon to get that label removed, because it is a bad look. I definitely think, especially when you're spending upwards of $1,000 on something, if there is a big warning on that page that says, be careful about buying this because a lot of people keep returning it, that does deter people from making that purchase. And that's not good for Microsoft. It just looks bad more than anything. It looks bad for Microsoft, it looks bad for Qualcomm. And so they definitely need to get that addressed. But I definitely don't think the laptop's being returned because people are having severe compatibility issues, or the product, the hardware itself just isn't meeting people's standards, because I don't think that's true at all. I think the Surface Laptop 7, as I've said already, best laptop that was released in the last year. I think the performance of it's great, battery life's great, build quality amazing, compatibility more than fine for 98% of people. I can't imagine there's been a sudden influx of creatives buying laptop 7s and going, actually, it doesn't run a Premiere Pro, and then returning it. I just don't think that's what's happening.
Yep. And speaking of, there's still a lot of good sales at Best Buy on the Qualcomm Snapdragon X laptops. You see them on Intel too, of course. But the reason I kind of mentioned that is the whole tariff situation is becoming a reality slowly. And if tariffs continue to stay in position, eventually that's going to trickle down to more expensive hardware, when it comes to being shipped in. So stuff that's already here and it's been on store shelves or in stock obviously doesn't have tariffs, and so the prices can be very competitive. But if you're on the fence of wanting to get a new laptop and you're not, I need to live on the edge and have the fastest thing right now, kind of person, it's probably a really good time to seriously go look at some of these laptops. The Lenovo Slim 7X, I think it is a Qualcomm based one, got outstanding reviews. That one's at Best Buy, and it's gorgeous looking. It has such a nice screen and nice design on it. I think you can get it sometimes for like $800 or something like that. So you may,
sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, so you may want to go check those out before prices might go up, because we don't know what's going to happen.
I was going to say, before we move on from this, you talking about pricing, that just reminded me of a tweet I saw /made about a week ago. I saw on Twitter a user. I'll just read the tweet word for word, and then we can discuss my response to it. So this user posted and said, "This is the best laptop in the world, period. MacBook Air M4, 32 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, 18 hours of battery life, 13-inch display, 2.7 pounds, $700 with a student discount. No competition." And I looked at this tweet, which now has 14 million views and lots of replies. People going, "Yeah, the MacBook Air is amazing, this and the other." I looked at this tweet and I thought, no, that's not fair. It's not fair. So I quote tweeted it, and I made my own version about the Laptop 7. So I wrote, "This is the best laptop in the world, period. Snapdragon X Elite, 32 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, 20 hours of battery life, a 120 hertz, 13.8-inch touchscreen, 2.9 pounds, and only $1,500 on sale right now. No student discount required." When you look at it like that, I think it's unfair for people to influencers, whoever you may be in this field, to look at a MacBook Air and just blindly tell people that that's the best laptop and to go and buy it. It just isn't. It just isn't. And I'm gonna die on this hill and tell every single time someone says the M4 MacBook Air best laptop to buy, I'm gonna say no, it isn't. Laptop 7 better, more value for money, better screen, arguably better trackpad, which I know is very controversial to say when talking about a MacBook, but I think the Laptop 7's trackpad is amazing. Better keyboard, personally, my thoughts. It's just a better laptop. Buy the Laptop 7. Save $200.
And let's also don't forget, Apple has conceded and made concessions with the new MacBook Air. So it ships now, I believe, with a default 16 gigs of RAM, because everybody used to complain that they were offering even 8 gigs of RAM. And everybody's like, it was very expensive to go from 8 to 16 gigs. Well, we talked about this, previously, how all Qualcomm Snapdragon X laptops default ship with 16 gigs of RAM. That started last summer. And they all have a high-end NPU, whether it's the most basic version or the X Elite. And they also drove down the price. I mentioned my Pro 11 review. It's 16 gigs of RAM. You got more storage. It's way better performance, but it's also $200 cheaper this year, because the Intel versions from the previous year were more expensive. And so Qualcomm was actually pushing down the prices on these laptops. And so because of that, Apple's had to respond. Because when is the last time Apple slashed prices and wanted to slash prices, right? They're notorious for operating on high profit margins, but they're doing that because the market has been pushing down prices. Asus told us this back in December before CES. They said that one of their goals in 2025 is, and that they're actually doing, is lowering prices on a bunch of their ZenBooks across the board. And it's not like, a lot, but it'd be like $100 here, $50 there, but still it is a lot, right? It bucks the trend where we expect technology to kind of get better, but also slowly increase in price, which is always kind of what's happened. So this is the first time where you're starting to see prices pushed down while also offering things like availability of OLED displays, which OLED displays used to be like in 1,200 and higher laptops, but now you can get them in, $899 laptops. So, I think Apple's had to cut the price. They've had to increase the RAM because it was a better deal on the PC side. And even moreover, it was a better deal to go with the Qualcomm version over the Intel. talked about the XPS 13 before. For a little while, both the Intel and Qualcomm versions were sold on Dell.com, and they had the exact same configurations, but the Qualcomm version, I think, was $200 cheaper. And it was just like, how do you explain that to someone looking to go buy a laptop? It's just like, and the performance on the Qualcomm version was actually going to be better, along with better battery life. So it's like, but eventually Intel adjusted their prices with Dell, and so they became comparative. So I think we're just seeing downward market pressures. I'm glad the MacBook Air M4 is out there and it's competitive, and people, it's well received, because that helps then drive the Windows PC side to do more. I still will say that people switching between operating systems is still the exception, just like people switching browsers. If you had a MacBook Air from a couple of years ago, you're very likely to go stick with the new MacBook Air and just upgrade it. But if you're coming from a Dell XPS 13, from a couple of years ago, I don't know if you're going to want to switch to a MacBook. Some people might, but it's not like there's a huge churn of people doing it, because it's a lot of work to switch laptops. Like, I used to use Mac OS for a while, back around 2015-ish. And I got to know it, and I was fluent in it, and I figured everything out. But now if you put me in front of it, I have absolutely no idea how to work it. It's like really frustrating. And people know what they like and like what they want, so I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but whatever. Okay, so that was laptop 7. There was, what was the other thing we were going to talk about?
We could stick with Surface. We can move on to
the smaller Surface. Yeah. So tell us about that. What happened this week?
Yeah, so a friend of mine alerted me to a thing that they spotted this week on a China Certification Center website, the CCC. I think this is a whole process that devices have to go through in China to get certified for sale. But they noticed that a number of new Microsoft devices had appeared on there over the last few days, and I went to check it out. And yes, indeed, that there are some new model numbers that we've not yet seen before. And doing a bit of digging, those model numbers do appear to be related to the upcoming smaller Surface Pro. So we've talked about these smaller Surface devices a handful of times now on the podcast. I'm expecting to see a smaller Surface Pro and Surface laptop debut this spring, possibly announced as soon as next month, maybe even on April 4th at Microsoft's 50th event. We don't know. But in the next month or so, I'm expecting to see Microsoft sort of make an announcement that they are shipping these smaller devices. And as we get closer to that launch, I am starting to hear more information, some more concrete information about their sizing and stuff. I think when we first started talking about these devices, we were sort of thinking 11 to 12 inches in size. Weren't for definitely sure on that, but that's kind of what we were hearing at the time. As we get closer, it's becoming more into focus. I'm hearing these devices are a bit bigger than that. They're not as small as we thought they were going to be, but they're not as tight. They're still smaller than the current available Surface Pro and Surface laptop. So I'm hearing the Surface Pro will probably be around 12 inches in size, and the upcoming smaller Surface laptop will be closer to 13 inches in size. So if we look at the laptop line there, with this upcoming smaller Surface laptop, we'll have a 13-inch model, a 14-inch model. Technically, the current laptop 7 is 13.8 inches. If we round that up, it's 14 inches. And then we have a 15-inch model. So it'll be, 13, 14, 15-inch model of the Surface Laptop 7. And for Surface Pro, it'll be a 12-inch model and a 13-inch model. Is making them an inch smaller, even necessary? Right. Is it worth it? I don't know. I don't know why. I've said it from the beginning. Even when they was rumored to be 11 and 12 inches, I still don't see the point in these. I genuinely don't. I know people want these smaller devices. I don't know who you are or why you want them, but Microsoft is moving ahead with them as the.
There's a couple. I get the point, but it really does depend on some crucial factors, right? So yes, we know for one, at least according to your reporting, it's going to use the Snapdragon X or X Plus chips.
Right.
So I assume that there's going to be different SKUs based on pricing. So they'll probably announce the cheapest version will be the Snapdragon X, which is a really good chip. It's and it also, because all Qualcomm Snapdragon chips across the board have the same NPU on board. These are all Copilot Plus PCs automatically, right? So you're going to get that full feature set, which is pretty significant. You'll also, I can't see them cutting back on this, but they should all be 16 gigs of RAM too, which is not insignificant.
Yeah.
So where I could see sort of the difference here when it comes to the engineering, when you build one of these laptops or tablets, whatever, it's really up to the design team and engineering team on the thermal envelope to decide what they want to do. So you could have a Qualcomm X Elite chip with dual fans in it. I think there are a couple of those that do have that. I think Samsung has it too. So so it allows you to blast the chip full performance TDP and everything like that, cool it with 2 fans, right? You could have 1 fan. You could have passive cooling. So it just has vents on the device and air comes in and out, right? Or you could have a closed system, sort of like, wait, the Surface X was completely closed, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you could, that would, if they do that, that would allow them to create a very thin Surface Pro 12. That's very thin, solid edges, right? No venting on it. Still good performance, way better than whatever the Surface Go was, by comparison, especially in the Go laptop. It'll still be a significant difference in performance to the bigger Surface Pro, which would have venting and up to the X Elite chip. I think if they do that, that makes a pretty significant difference, even one that Zach would, I think, really like, like a really thin, self-enclosed tablet, going back to the Surface X days. That's only slightly smaller, and you're going to get slightly not as good performance, but you still get the full Copilot Plus AI suite, right? I think that is kind of compelling if the price can be brought down enough. Yeah, and have you talked about the display, what you're expecting in terms of the resolution and refresh rate and all that kind of stuff?
So how it was described to me when talking to sources is it's supposed to sort of be a flagship type display. I don't think it will be as good as the 13-inch model. It'll be probably Full HD Plus versus 2K Plus, which I think is on the 13-inch. So Full HD Plus, probably LCD, but it will be 120 hertz. I don't think it'll be OLED because, again, we're trying to keep the prices down here to sub. I think it's the target price is somewhere between $800 and $900 or something like that. But I have started to hear whispers. I've not been able to verify this yet, so take this with a grain of salt. But I have been hearing that Microsoft will debut an updated design on the smaller Surface Pro this spring, which has more uniform bezels. I think right now, if you look at the Pro 11, 13-inch, it has the thicker top chin and forehead, and then the bezels on the side are thinner. I think with the smaller version, they're trying to make it so those bezels are a little bit more even, which probably means that the side bezels will be a bit thicker than on the 13-inch, but the top and bottom bezel will be a little bit thinner than on the 13-inch. So, you win some, you lose some there. But it should make the device look a little bit more like an iPad. It's supposed to compete with the iPad. If you look at an iPad Air or an iPad Pro, those uniform bezels, they do look really nice. And I think Microsoft is trying to go that route with the Surface Pro as well. If that doesn't show up on the 12-inch Surface Pro this spring, I believe it will show up on the next gen Surface Pro either later this year or sometime in 2026, whenever that's supposed to land, because that's something they've been toying with internally for a while. But that could also help in regards to making it feel smaller, right? Because instead of just literally copying the Pro 11 and then shrinking it an inch, it's slightly different because of the bezel size differences. So that doesn't translate directly. But yeah, it is supposed to be a premium device. So it's not a Surface Go replacement. I know a lot of people are sort of hoping for that. This isn't what that is. This is going to be $300 to $400 more expensive than a Surface Go. So it can't be a Surface Go replacement. The display will be better. The materials will be better. It's supposed to be a premium device. And so, yeah, the Surface Go is very much a budget-friendly device. And so I do believe we'll see a Surface Go 5 at some point. I don't know when that will be, but that will probably happen in the next year or two. This is the smaller Surface Pro is not that. Whereas on the laptop side, the smaller Surface laptop is supposed to replace Laptop Go, because as we've talked about before, Laptop Go 3 sort of crept up into that pricing territory where it no longer made much sense for all of the sacrifices you're making when purchasing a Laptop Go over the full-size laptop. The lack of a backlit keyboard, the low resolution display, no face unlock versus, it had fingerprint, but it didn't have any face unlock. That for $800 just doesn't make much sense. And so this 13-inch laptop is supposed to sort of, bring all the premium features from the 14-inch down to the 13-inch, but also be priced basically the same as The Laptop Go was maybe a $50 more expensive, but for that, I think you're getting a much more well-rounded product, and I think it makes more sense in that regard. So yeah, this smaller Surface Laptop will replace Laptop Go, but the smaller Surface Pro is not supposed to replace Surface Go.
Getting back to the thermal stuff too, I should point out, if this is a passively cooled system, so it does have open venting, it would allow them to get some really good performance at least, or push those chips a little bit higher. But so even if they go with that, or they go with a closed system, which I would prefer if they do, if they make it a little bit, it'll be thinner, smoother edges, all that kind of stuff. Because if you don't have to put venting on something, you can really just round those edges off and make the thing super thin, right? But because of no fan in there, you also get extra battery life, right? Because the fan is a pretty big thing when you think about it, along with the piping and everything like that goes along with it. Not having that in there does allow them to put a bigger battery. When you combine that with the Snapdragon X and or X Plus chips, which we know have fewer cores and draw less power than the X Elite, you could, in theory, get really good battery life, especially because it's also a slightly smaller display. You're right. I mean, I'm almost positive it'll be slightly lower resolution because it would make sense. You're going to get a very similar PPI, even if it's at a lower resolution. The display is one of the things that draws the most battery power. And OLED actually draws, I think, more battery power than LCD these days. But, this thing could potentially get really good battery life with, that would make this a really good general computing tablet for people who just need to do office work, web browsing, watch videos, run your basic apps, some basic photo editing and all that kind of stuff. And then, I don't know, that's a cool thing. And that's something I would probably use. Now, the display might be too small for me, but you can always bump up. I can always bump up the scale of text if I need to. But I don't think it'll be as big of a difference, like say with the Surface Go, which was significantly smaller. And I was using it, but that one did border on, a little bit. It was just on the edge of being ridiculous, right? How small it was with that little keyboard, but it worked. It was like, so this could be a really interesting option if they do that. If it's a open vent system that also has a fan on there, the benefit would be the performance would be really probably pretty good on it. The downside, of course, is I think it'd be less distinction between the two of them. So
I think for me, the biggest focus Microsoft should have been sort of working on for these smaller devices is weight. Because I've said it before, both the Pro 11 and the Laptop 7 are heavy. They're not lightweight devices. They need to be, they go on a diet, I think, especially when you compare them to the MacBook Air and the iPad Pro. Those devices are super lightweight, and Surface is heavier in every aspect. And that's why I love the Pro X so much, because the Pro X was lightweight and it was super thin. It was almost as thin as an iPad, an older gen iPad Pro, not the new one, because the new one is ridiculously thin. But the older gen iPad Pro and the Surface Pro X were more or less comparable, and that was great. I loved the Pro X for that reason. But the Pro 9, the Pro 10, the Pro 11, they beefed up a little bit. Obviously, that for the for the vents, and also more battery life, which was a problem for Surface at the time, Surface Pro at the time. But it just means they're heavier and they're less travel friendly, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not saying they're like ridiculously heavy, but they are in their category, I think, a little bit on the heavier side versus the competition. And that's not a problem for everybody, but if you're somebody who is looking for a travel-friendly device, like you may be if you're looking at a smaller Surface Pro and Surface laptop like these 12 and 13-inch devices, then yeah, weight, I think, is the biggest factor there that they need to focus on. So yeah, that's basically the story there. We've seen that these model numbers are being pushed through certification centers, which does mean this is getting close to launch. Usually, getting a device certified in a region is the last step before, a device is allowed to be sold. And so, therefore, when we see them show up in things like the FCC or in this case, the China Certification Center, it means that Microsoft is gearing up to make the announcement. We've only seen the Surface Pro so far, but I'm as far as I'm aware, the laptop is still coming as well. It's just, I guess, not been certified just yet. So there we are. Any last thoughts on these smaller devices, Dan?
Just pricing, man. I think a lot of this is going to, the success of this device is going to depend on where they price it at. Because don't forget, Surface can get expensive when you start adding on the keyboard and the optional pen and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's always been, it's not like ridiculously expensive compared to buying a full-on laptop, but it does kind of drive up the price. And so they need to have enough distinction here between the size of it and the pricing of it to warrant not going to a Surface Pro, especially since the Surface Pro right now with Snapdragon X has dipped down in price quite a bit, right? Because it's getting a little bit older. So like, I really think what price they announce it at, and if, like I said, it goes for that super thinness, all sealed system, it could be a really interesting device. If it's only like $150 cheaper and it's still pretty thick, has open venting and a fan in it, then I feel like, then I'm like, well, what's kind of the point here? Why not just go for the bigger Surface Pro? So it'll be really interesting to see where those two things come down. I think it's going to kind of make or break the device and how people receive it. So it's going to be interesting there.
Yeah. Cool. We should probably move on to our next topic, our last topic of the day. Unless you had anything we need to add there.
No.
Cool. We can talk about Windows 11 and the suggestion that 25H2 may be coming into focus. So this week, and Microsoft has warned that this was going to be happening soon, but this week the dev channel moved on to a new sequence of build numbers, and that usually means, Microsoft likes to pretend that doesn't mean anything, but it does mean stuff. Internally, it means that some things are changing. The way they're sort of viewing different releases is starting to take shape. And so the dev channel this week moved to build 26200. Now, this is still a Germanium based build. For those who don't know, Germanium is the name of the platform release that version 24H2 is currently based on. Every year we get a new version of Windows 11, 23H2, version 24H2, maybe 25H2 later this year. But none of that really matters. It's all about what the actual underlying platform version is. Sometimes the platform version remains the same between Windows version releases. Sometimes it doesn't. And so if we take a look at the releases we've had with Windows 11, we had version 21H2, which was based on a new platform release, version 22H2, which was also based on a new platform release, version 23H2, which was not based on a Windows platform release, and then version 24H2 last year that was based on a new platform release. And so the question arises this year: what are we getting? Are we going to get a new platform release for 25H2, or are we not going to get one? Based on what's happening in the dev channel this week, the suggestion is we won't be. The new build sequence is still based on Germanium, the 24H2 platform release. And so it does look like 25H2 will end up being an enablement package type release, which is good and bad news. It's good news because it means the update process from 24H2 to 25H2 is super simple and straightforward. Less risk doing that download. It's not an OS swap. It simply just services the OS, and it's much quicker and a much smaller download as a result. But the downside is it means Windows can get quite bloated when this happens. Like when you build an ISO with the latest cumulative update, that ISO gets quite big unless you compress it and stuff. And so, there are ups and downs, reasons for and against it. This isn't confirmed. Microsoft has not yet officially announced 25H2. But, reading the tea leaves here, this does seem like this is how they're going to do it, because they've announced that with these new dev channel builds, they will be bringing underlying platform changes to Germanium. So they're going to make some underlying changes to the current shipping platform release. And the reason why I think they're doing that is because I think I've said it on the podcast before, I'd been hearing that the upcoming Snapdragon X2 processors required some underlying platform changes that were at the time only available in the Windows Canary channel, which meant that they were being developed for the next Windows platform release. But if 25H2 isn't getting a new platform release, these upcoming X2 devices would be screwed. And so Microsoft appears to be backporting that stuff to Germanium so that they can do a 25H2 based on the current in-market platform release. And that will enable Snapdragon X2 devices to run on Germanium based versions of Windows 11. So this is all very technical and very no. It doesn't really matter, to be fair. It just means that Microsoft is, I think, beginning to shape 25H2, and so from here on out until September, which is when I'm hearing 25H2 will probably be finalized or announced, or it'll probably be announced before then. But you know what I mean, like finalized and ready to ship. We will probably start seeing features more specifically dedicated to the 26200 range. And so yeah, that's the news. If you were interested in the latest ongoings in the Windows development world,
I guess, well, that leads into an interesting question for next week. So I won't be here next week for the podcast, as we assume, unless we record it early, as I'll be traveling to Microsoft's campus for their part of it's a 50th anniversary little celebration that they're having with some of the media, but also the big news is 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, I believe, on Friday. Satya Nadella and company are going to get on stage and talk about Copilot AI, and to make it interesting, consumer versions of it, right? This isn't going to be some sort of like office businessy thing, although they might talk about Copilot in Office since that is a consumer product too. But I think, they're going to talk about Copilot itself as the separate entity and app that runs on Android, iOS, and as an app in Windows 11 now, and new features, right? We've been seeing the slow redesign of the desktop app for Windows. We talked about it, I believe, last week and how good it looks now. They have a new side menu that shows your history. There's also the ability to connect it up via your phone, and it works specifically well with Samsung devices where Copilot can now interact from your desktop PC with your phone, which is kind of cool. But then none of this stuff they haven't done a public blog post yet announcing these features, which seem to me pretty significant features, right? We're starting to finally see, because once they stripped Copilot back down with this new design, a lot of people are complaining that was missing a lot of features, which is fair. Like we used to have plugins, right? What happened to those things,
yeah,
right? So we're finally, looks like, starting to get features added back in, which always seemed like the plan. But there's been no blog post talking about that. The latest blog post that they had was regarding the the Think Deeper option, which I see now when I open my Copilot app. I see it on the right side. It says Think Deeper, and you click it, and it lets you access that. So, two questions I have is, of course, what are they announcing next week? Because I imagine some of what we just talked about will be highlighted, but I imagine there's going to be more that they want to talk about. And what's more with Windows 11, and it could be tied to this 25H2, are they thinking about? Because we know they want to do like an AI OS, right? That's the holy grail, is to start mixing this stuff into the operating system instead of sitting on top of it. So it allows deeper plumbing and access. Samsung, I've been talking about, has been doing this lately with the Samsung S25 Ultra series, or the S25 series, and Samsung AI. Are they going to show us new features that are coming? Are they going to show some features that will be like, here's new stuff and it launches now and you'll see it rolling out in the next couple of days? Are they going to show a vision for mobile devices? Obviously, there's the Copilot apps on iOS and Android, but are they going to have something more there to show off and deeper integrations? Just this week, ChatGPT, or I should say OpenAI, showed off their brand new image generator, which replaces DALL-E, and it's gotten amazing reviews. It fixes a ton of limitations that the previous version had, and it does some really crazy stuff. Is that going to be integrated into Copilot? You would assume so, since they're using DALL-E already, right? So I imagine they will want to talk about that and at least give us an estimate or when that's planning to be integrated and roll out, because to me that would be big news, right? If because right now it's I believe OpenAI just delayed the access to this for free users. It's available, I believe, for the pro users. But if Microsoft comes out next week and it's like, hey, our Copilot, maybe they'll just do Copilot Pro, we'll have access to the new image generator starting today or something like that. That would be big news. So I don't know. What do you think that they might talk about? And then you've also speculated that maybe they'll announce these new Surface devices at this event, right?
Yeah.
Because we just talked about they should have 16 gigs of RAM. They definitely have Qualcomm's 45 TOPS NPU, which is really cool that Qualcomm standardized that. Meanwhile, Intel's literally all over the map when it comes to its NPUs. So these will be Copilot plus PC, showing off everything that Copilot can do. I don't know. What do you think about this stuff?
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to see something quite forward-leaning in regards to Windows and Copilot sort of being fused together for unique experiences. Because it is the 50th anniversary event. They are going to want to be like, hey, here's we're celebrating 50 years. Here's what got us to here today, and then here's where we're going next. And I think even if it's conceptual stuff, I don't know if it will. Based on the whole Apple the Apple Intelligence sort of
Right.
drama,
Yeah.
I don't know if standing on stage and showcasing concepts art is going to sort of fly here. But if they've got stuff to show, if they want to show us where they're heading or where they want to head with Windows and Copilot, I think April 4th is a good place to do it. They don't even have to give a certain release date. They can be like, here's where we're going, and it can even be like a teaser at the end. I don't even really think they have to go into too much detail about it, really. But I would be surprised if the event comes and goes and all they did is talk about the Copilot app for an hour and then said goodbye. Because you flew out there for that, Dan. That's offensive.
They have been pretty quiet with Copilot for the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Outside of the few things we just mentioned, which have been, not insignificant, but we still sort of need their grander vision. We need to hear from Mustafa, is that his name? The Microsoft AI CEO, and like his ideas around this kind of stuff. By the way, your expectation / prediction with Apple Intelligence came true. We talked about this, I believe, 2 weeks ago. It was Mark Gurman did an article in Bloomberg talking about how Apple's 5 years behind the competition when it comes to AI, that they're really caught off guard by all this. And now they're not able to deliver what was basically the banner feature to iPhone 16, which is AI Siri, right? To actually make it good. Now the expectation is that might not happen until the fall, at which point we're on iOS 17 at that point, right? And then Zach asked the question, do you think there would be a lawsuit? And the answer is yes. Being America, not too surprising, but a class action lawsuit has been filed against Apple for the exact same reasons that Zach was expecting, which is Apple promised these features for the brand new iPhone. I was just in New York City on Tuesday, and I was about to go through, I think it was the Lincoln Tunnel. There's always an Apple banner, like ad, that's always there. It's been there for years. They just update it every year, and it's just like stupid iPhone on the side, and it's just like Apple Intelligence, right? Wow. So they're like, that was the whole thing with the iPhone 16, because otherwise the iPhone 16 was pretty boring, right? I mean, yeah, it's better than last year's version in some ways, but it's not like really massive. But by the way, you got to give Apple like a little credit, or at least luck, that with AI becoming so big, they're like, AI, you mean Apple Intelligence? Wink. Like that was like the marketing team was just like, all right, give us a check for $1 million for that one.
Yeah.
Like they really just lucked out there. Unfortunately, they were completely unready for AI at their company level. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, I think next week could be really interesting because some people are still, oh, AI is a fad and all this, but now it's like, but it waxes and wanes, right? Like people will be like, oh, this is but this week everybody's been going nuts over the new ChatGPT image generator because it's so good. Like people are taking memes and they're like redoing them, and it's like a whole new level for this stuff. So I'd like to see what Microsoft has to do. Ideally, I would also like to see them talk more about the value for Copilot Pro, because I'm all about supporting, I have Gemini Pro as a trial, but I have Copilot on all my devices, and it's what I use all the time. I don't currently pay for Copilot Pro. I did for a little while, but I don't anymore. I don't mind paying for a Pro version. $20 a month is pretty steep, I would say. More, not out of the bounds, though, of like something I would consider, except for the fact it needs significant feature differentiation from the regular version. Like they'll be like, oh, with the Pro version, when at peak usage, you get instant, priority queue. Back when Copilot first launched and was, Bing Chat, all that, like that mattered, right? There were delays in using it. I've never seen a delay now with using Copilot. Like it's fast for the free version. I've never run into like peak hour usage and having delays. So I really need like more value added to the Copilot Pro level before I would want to pay the $20 to it. So I would hope that they start to address that, because I keep checking. I'm like, let me go check the feature because maybe I'll do it. And it's just like, you get early access to new stuff. And it's like, what does that mean though? Like currently, what does a Copilot Pro user have over a regular Copilot user, right? What's their advantage? So I'd like to see them address that too. So hopefully they do. But either way, that like I said, I'll be out there covering it, but it is live streamed. So we'll have a live blog going on the site for reactions. If they do have new Surface devices, of course, we'll also cover that, and I'll get some hands-on and some photos of it, my first impressions, and we'll just kind of go from there. But I don't know. I hope Microsoft does a significant event here, because I'm really kind of curious. Also, the other thing I didn't mention, but we talked about previously on a few podcasts ago, I would expect and hope that they show off Copilot built into the new smart TVs for Samsung and LG, which was announced at CES, but it was only in a press release, like in a little paragraph, and there were no photos of it and no demonstrations. So we have no idea what it looks like and how it's going to work. They did talk about like the features of what's going to have, but I would be shocked if they don't have Samsung there. The Samsung one was going to have the deeper integration, looked like, which doesn't surprise me because Samsung and Microsoft work pretty closely on this stuff. But I would love to see Samsung on stage, like, here's our new 65-inch or 75-inch TV with Copilot. Look what it can do. And, we talked about it should be able to, like, you can pause the screen and ask it, like, to circle to search almost, like, where did that shirt come from, or what's that shirt? And you can ask AI to go search for it or something like that. It should also smartly learn your viewing habits to give recommendations. And yeah, who knows what else? I think there were a couple other features, but I would hope that they show that off too, because I would totally get a new Samsung TV if it has like useful AI in it, right? Like, I'm all about that stuff, but it's got to have the right features to make it worth it, right? So, what about you? Would you? I know you prefer the LG TVs. I
do.
did, up until the point that I got severe burn-in on my LG OLED that I've not been able to get rid of. Meanwhile, my Samsung one does not. So I'm leaning more towards just sticking with Samsung. Plus, it works better with Samsung devices. But I don't know. Would you get a smart TV with this Copilot stuff built in if it did something useful?
I don't know if I'm in ready to buy a new TV yet, but when the time does come, I think I would definitely consider getting one with Copilot. Because why not? I mean, it's I don't see what I don't think the cheap TVs without it will be any cheaper, and so
Right.
I might as well go for the TV with the best features for the price that I can afford. But yeah, no, I'm definitely not ready to buy a new TV. I only bought my 65-inch LG in 2021, I think it was, and so
Oh, that's so ancient.
yeah, I know. This is what's really nice about
Gross.
TVs.
Throw it in the bin.
What's really nice about TVs is that they don't change much year over year. Like, I look at my TV and I look at the latest LG and I'm like, oh, it's a bit brighter. Oh, that's fine. I don't need it.
The
I'm
big
good.
advancements, I would say, is one, availability of larger sizes that have come down in
Yeah.
price, right?
Yes.
Like, it is ridiculous. I can go to Best Buy and be like, maybe that 85-inch. Like, that thing is huge, but it's
Yeah.
like within range now. Like, when an 85-inch first came out, it was like $20,000. Now it's like you can get on sale for, I think, like 3,000, right?
Yeah.
High refresh rates are pretty standard now, right? So they're good for
Right.
gaming, because that was always an issue with the OLED stuff, was the refresh rates and the ghosting with them. Uh,
That's the
the
only
other thing,
time. Yeah, that's the only time I felt FOMO when my old TV was I think 55-inch LCD with 60 hertz
60
max,
hertz,
and this is when OLED at 120 was coming down in affordability, and so that's when I
yeah.
made the jump. But I'm not really a TV person outside of that. I don't need the newest TV every year. I'm happy to hold on to it for as long as it works, or if a brand new technology that really is making the experience different, then that's what I'll
Well,
go
I
for
was
the
going to say, the other big advancement I saw was the anti-reflectivity on the displays,
yeah.
which I'm obviously a huge fan of. But like, I want no glare on my TVs, but I also want the super sharp contrast with OLED and all that. So I think that's good. Also, have you seen them bezels on those new TVs? It's
Yeah,
absurd.
they're
It's
not
just
there.
like absolutely ridiculous. So, yeah, hopefully they do stuff with that next week as well.
Yeah.
In which case, that'd be kind of I think, show off a pretty large ecosystem of Copilotness, right? Because I think that's going to be an interesting story to tell as well. We got to get away from just like, here's an app here, right? People want integration with things. This
Yes.
is what's going on in China right now. They're really focusing on putting AI into all their appliances and jazz. Like, I guess they put it into their new cars by, I think it's BYD. I think we were talking about this last week, but they're putting a DeepSeek into their cars, and it can like detect the quality of the road and in real time update the suspension of the car. So like if you're coming up to a pothole or something like that, it can like brace for it and change the suspension so you don't feel it. Like that's like crazy level of like getting into like where AI is going to really make a difference. Right now in the US, though, we're not quite there yet for it. Speaking of Samsung, just real quickly, you still using the S25 Ultra?
Yep. Right here.
Any new thoughts on it? Have you
No,
finally customized it?
yeah, I finally customized it. I've got it all set up. It's I love it. Yeah, I think I'm probably going to hang on to this for the foreseeable future, unless Samsung comes out with its trifold, because I can't not get that.
Have you thought about expanding to their wearables now because of that?
I have. Sorry, I just knocked the mic there. It's just what the bang was. I have a Galaxy Fit. This is like I don't even know. I think it's old. I don't know how long I've had it. I never really used it, and I just sort of synced it up when I bought this. It's actually really nice. It's basically Samsung's Fitbit. It's like it's not their smartwatch, but it's also like not super dumb. It's basically it's a fitness watch, but it gets great battery life. It lasts like 5 to 7 days, and it just notification syncing. That's all I really needed to do, and it's great. Yeah, I can track my sleep with it and calorie burnt and all that. And I did pull the trigger on the Galaxy Buds Pro, which these might be the best headphones, wireless earbuds I've ever used.
Wow. You're not the first to say that. My best friend bought those and said the same thing. He says they're outstanding. And I was like, well, yeah, they completely redesigned them after the, like the last 2 generations were fine, but they didn't stay in the ears as well. And to Samsung's credit, they try to go for their own unique take on it. Whereas this version, they're just like, all right, we're just going to use the Apple design. But I keep hearing that it works well. Like it was a good trade-off, like that they're good. So yeah, tell me about them.
Yeah, they're really nice. I'm not an audiophile, so I can't really go into detail about how they've got great sound qualities. All I can tell you is that they do sound amazing. The design of them is good. I know everyone says they're quite Apple copycats, and the white ones definitely are, but these are the silver or the dark grey ones. And I do think they look different enough. They're quite alien looking, I think, which is really nice. They use like a triangular design, and like they have lights on them. I don't know if you can see. Oh, yeah, there you go. Let's come on there briefly. You can turn them on so you can walk around the street like a cyberpunk person with lights coming out your ears. It's really great. They've got really satisfying haptic feedback when you use the stems to control audio and stuff. So when you squeeze them, it feels like you're pressing a button, which I don't think you are. I think it is haptics, but it feels like you're clicking something. It's really satisfying. I think the only negative about these that I have is that they don't support multi-point pairing, so you can't be connected to both your laptop and your phone, which is a comfort that I didn't realize was a luxury until it was gone. You know, you have the Surface headphones, which I use every day, basically when I'm at my computer, which syncs to my phone as well. And I've never really thought about it. Not having it on these is a little bit of a pain, but these are more for going out anyway. And when I'm out, I've only ever got my phone on me regardless. So it's not the end of the world. So yeah, when I'm at a desk, I use the Surface headphones.
I believe that's a pain point also with the Bose. I have the Bose Quiet Comfort 2 earbuds. That's my only thing. It's like I use those at the gym though. But I like when I was flying this week, I took them with me too. So like I kind of want the Samsung ones, but I also technically already have really good earbuds. I don't need them, but I am curious because now you're the second person that has kind of raved about them. And I think I really like the Bose design. So, it's funny. I wasn't really that much aware of the Galaxy Fit option, but the Galaxy Fit 3, it's $60.
It's cheap as hell. Yeah, when I first bought it, I was like, "This is for what you pay. It's really not bad."
I mean, it's got it's a 40 inch. It's a 40 millimeter in size, but it has like a cool color display on it. Like,
oh yeah, it's like the Fitbit Sense, but the Fitbit Sense is like a $250 wearable.
It's a 1.6 inch display. And it has a light sensor. It has a barometer. It has water IP68.
Shockingly good value for what it is.
They have the quick release band changes, which I really enjoy. 13 days of battery life.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. I'm really enjoying it, to be fair. I don't know why I didn't use it
I
because
was
I was
gonna
all
say,
in on Fitbit. That was my problem. Is that it's fully invested in Fitbit that I was blind to everything else. But now I'm throwing Google away, and so I'm having a
it
great
looks
time.
like a skinny Apple Watch, is what it
It
looks
does,
like.
yeah. I really like it. I got mine in black because it matches my black phone. But it comes in, I think, silver and gold as well. I think, if I'm not
It
mistaken.
comes in dark gray, silver, and then there's pink gold.
Right. Yeah.
But like, and you can do a trade-in for something for up to $20 off. But $60? Don't get me wrong. I'm using the Galaxy Watch Ultra, which I love. Like, and we've gone over the fact I'm a mechanical watch nerd. Like, I'm wearing my mechanical watch right now because I got to force myself sometimes to wear it because
Yeah. You
I
spend
kind
too
of
much
really
money on
like
it.
the Ultra. Like, it's just like, it's been so awesome. I still got to do a little write-up on it because I just think it's fantastic. But I kind of want the Galaxy Fit 3 now.
Yeah. It's so thin and
Because,
light. I forget it's on. Like, I genuinely forget that I'm wearing
yeah,
it.
because I could wear that on my right hand and
Yeah.
then wear my mechanical on the other hand and still kind of get probably a lot of the same stuff.
Samsung Health.
What do you think of the Samsung Health stuff?
I do like it. My only gripe with it is that every morning when I want to see my sleep info, I have to go in and manually sync for some reason. I don't, for whatever reason, the sleep data doesn't
Oh,
sync automatically.
mine does. As soon as I take it out of sleep, I wait. I'll be going like washing my face and all that, and I get a vibration. My score comes in.
I might just be being impatient. It's usually the first thing I look at. I'll open my eyes and I check my sleep
Yeah, because
data.
it's got to sync and it does an analysis, right? So
Yeah,
it's not
sure.
completely
I
instant.
might just be
But
being really impatient. But
what do you have your sleep animal yet?
I don't. Oh, sleep coaching. No, I don't have it yet. No, sleep.
You
I'm
got to do
still
it for like 7
learning it.
days in a row.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a
Um,
penguin.
I haven't got mine yet.
Have you reached your like when you reach a goal? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
so
yeah,
delightful. It does a
yeah.
little fireworks. It's like like I love doing. I don't know. I think they have the best health ecosystem right now. Apple's is really good, but in terms of useful information, I find Samsung's the best because they don't just give you your stats; they give you recommendations and tips and comparisons and all this kind of stuff, which I think is
Yeah.
really the important thing to do. So
Real quick,
cool.
one last thing
Yeah.
before we wrap up. I just want to go back to what we were talking about in regards to the Microsoft event next week. Just thinking about it in context, it would be crazy if they didn't announce something along the lines of what we've discussed. Because if they don't announce anything, then I don't think Apple's ready to do it yet, but I think Google is ready to announce AI features that are woven throughout Android. Like, I think they're rumored to be
Right.
working on Pixie. I think there's codename Pixie, which is supposed to be like this agentic Gemini, which is woven throughout the OS and does notifications and is able to help you in apps and this, that, and the other. This sort of next gen AI assistant that we've been sort of talking about in regards to what Microsoft has been working on internally for NXT. Pixie, I think, is supposed to be that, but Google's version. And I think if Microsoft isn't ready to announce it yet, Google is ready to announce theirs. And so Google will beat them to the punch. So I think Microsoft has no choice really but to announce something along this, like the lines of, Copilot and Windows coming together to be the AI OS. Whether it's on April 4th or at Build next month is another question entirely. Microsoft has said that Windows will be a topic of discussion at Build, which is, they rarely say that these days, but they have included Windows in the sort of tagline for Build this year, which is interesting. Maybe they'll tease it on April 4th, but then talk more about it at Build. It could go like that, or maybe it'll be a full-blown announcement April 4th, learn more at Build. Or it might be nothing, and we were just hoping it's all copium, and nothing will happen, and it'll just be about the Copilot app, I'll buy a Mac if they do that.
Yeah, it's the last time Microsoft held an AI event was the big one where they announced Bing Chat in the partnership and all that kind of stuff. That was like a really big deal when they're showing off all the features. So they haven't done it since, which tells me they got to have quite a few things to sort of talk about and show off. And I think the things we went over here have to be candidates for that. So I'm excited. We'll see how it goes. Tune in next week. We'll see if we can do a podcast reaction at some point. If I might not be able to, but Zach might team up here with Ben for our podcast. But anyway, we'll go and do some audience questions now for the live chat. As always, you can follow us on Twitter and Threads and Blue Sky. Just search for Daniel Rubino. I'm not going to give out my exact address because I don't know it anymore, but it's RUB as in boy INO, and Zac is ZACBOWDEN. He's also on all those channels, and we do pay attention, and you can ask us questions there, and we'll do our best to answer them. Other than that, though, we do record this every Thursday, usually at 2 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel if you want to join the live chat. Otherwise, you can go there and watch the replay. As always, though, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone. I realized I didn't do a thing of the week, but we probably didn't have one.
Mine would have been Severance. Everyone needs to finish Severance.
I still got to do that, yeah.
Oh, actually, I've also started The Studio on Apple TV Plus, which just, I think...
I've heard great things, but yeah, they got amazing reviews.
It's great. It is great. Episode 2 was fantastic. Don't want to spoil it, though. So yeah, if you have any questions, now's the time to throw them in the chat, and we will hang around and do our best to answer them. If there are no questions, we will leave. So if you want us to stick around, put some questions in. Yeah, it'd be so funny if next week Microsoft doesn't announce anything like substantial. It's like, come on, guys, read the room.
You would think, I mean, I'll be real, that if they do Surface Pro, like in the new ones you're talking about, would be really interesting. Because I could totally see that happening because they would tie it into their hardware AI story, right?
Yeah.
Because sure, Pro 11 and Laptop 7 are their flagship devices, but we just talked about how they're technically old, quote unquote, right? They're not brand new stuff. So like having new hardware show it off could be interesting.
Yeah, and it's not like they're super different. Like it isn't a next gen Surface Pro and Surface Laptop. It's more right. Like additions to the lineup, and so it wouldn't be out of the realm to be like, hey, here's two new sizes, and all the demos today will be on these devices, because that makes sense. Especially if the Copilot Windows integration stuff that we hope will be talked about is Copilot Plus exclusive. It's a great showcase for all of these features available on devices that start at whatever price these devices start at. And so, yeah, it would blow my mind if they don't do this, but they probably won't because it's Microsoft.
I hope, but like, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, right? We always talk about that, but like, if they make me fly out to Redmond,
right,
and then a couple of weeks later have another event, and then a couple weeks later they're going to build. I mean,
yeah.
Like, can't we just condense some of this stuff together? Yeah. Because I don't think like they have to be doing those next week. It wouldn't make sense to hold a brand new Surface event for both devices, since you're right. Agree. They're in generation processors. They're just additions to the current lineup, not the next generation. So it would be weird for them to have a full event for both of these when they're just going to be like, that stuff we announced last year, these are the same, but slightly smaller and slower and cheaper. Like, it's like, okay. Yeah.
My Surface Pro 2017 model will no longer be supported come October. Should I wait for the next gen Surface Pro or laptop, or the laptop Studio?
So
go on, Dan.
I was going to say, if you're going to go with the Surface Pro, so there's always two options here. One is, of course, if you get the Surface Pro 11, by that time, you can save a lot of money, and you would get an excellent device.
You can save a lot of money now.
Right. Yeah. So like, it's a really good deal, right? And I think you'd be very happy with it. You're not going to be like, when Surface Pro 12 comes out, be like, oh my God, I should have waited. It's completely different. Zac can correct me if I'm wrong. I doubt very much they're going to do much in the way of changing the hardware. Fingers crossed, maybe anti-reflective display.
Yeah, I think maybe the bezel stuff as well, but that's probably
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and the big thing would be the processor. Now, getting to that, we are hearing Snapdragon X2, which uses the Gen 3 Orion cores, is a significant jump in performance. It's not like a tick. It's like it's slight, increase in megahertz. Like it's a big newish design for this thing that's supposed to be competitive with the M4. So that's interesting, but it depends what you're using your Pro for. I can tell you someone who uses the Pro 11. I'm never like, oh, if this thing was only faster. It's not like that anymore. I find it faster than almost all my Intel laptops for everyday things. So I think that would be the choice. And then I don't know about Laptop Studio because we don't know the status of that.
Yeah.
But Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't wait. I think I'd probably, if you wanted a new Pro, I'd get one now for the big discounts that you can find it on. That paired with the OLED Pro 11 with a Flex keyboard is great. It's a great
So
setup
good.
if you're into that form factor. You won't be disappointed.
Someone was asking about the size of the new Surface Pro. If it would be comparable to, oh yeah, do you think the new smaller Surface Pro will be similar in size to Surface Pro 3?
Yeah, with thinner bezels. So if you take a Pro 3 and make the bezels thinner, but keep the display the same size or roughly that size, that's probably what it will be like, I imagine. So
Yeah,
tiny bit
12-inch
smaller.
display.
Yeah,
Yep.
tiny bit smaller than the Pro 11, but not hugely smaller.
It only weighed 1.76 pounds.
Oh, it
Did
did?
you know that?
How much
Yep.
is the Pro 11? Do you remember? It might be 1.9 or 1.86.
1.97.
Jeez. Chunky.
Yeah. I think it's because they put a denter, they have more space for a battery. So the battery is what makes it heavy. But yeah, so the Surface Pro 3, to recap for people who forgot, including myself, had a 12-inch display with a resolution of 2160 by 1440. And it weighed 1.76 pounds. And that's the generation they switched to. Is that the one they switched to the 4x3 aspect?
Yes, that was the first 3x2 Surface.
A 3x2, yeah.
There was a question here that I have lost. Where did it go?
By the way, you can go. I do have my Surface Pro 3 review still up on the site.
Sorry, go on.
Cool looking device. And I was going to say that was a cool looking device.
Yeah, that was the first one where they nailed it, really, isn't it? It's the sort of origin point of the modern Surface we have.
Right. Yeah.
Jez has done some great reporting on merging Xbox and Windows for the next gen Xbox. Have you heard from the Windows side how this will affect Windows for home PCs? I think what you've heard really is already from the Windows side. Windows is adapting to be better on handhelds. / also ideally will run in its full capacity on the next gen Xbox console. What that basically means is there will be different shells for different kinds of devices. So you'll get a handheld shell, which will likely scale to the console. And that will be a thing that you can enable or disable in settings, just like you can on, say, the Steam Deck. Now, maybe the consoles are a little bit more locked down in that regard, where you can't switch between them, because using Windows desktop with a controller probably isn't very fun. I don't know if that's the case for sure. Maybe it will be something you can still configure on the Xbox console. But the rumor is the main reason why they're moving to full Windows is the openness of Windows. Windows being an open platform in regards to app stores. And so Steam or the Epic Game Store, you could download games onto your Xbox console from those stores and play them. To be fair, I don't see why that hasn't always been the case, but it hasn't. And so there are some hurdles there in regards to especially game optimization. I don't know how many people really know this, but in Xbox, console hardware is a curated set of specs. Essentially, it's a universal base for games. But because of the specialized operating systems that these consoles run, PlayStation and Xbox, you can squeeze a lot more power out of them. And so, the GPU in an Xbox Series X may not be as good as a 3080 or even a 2080, but because of the performance gains you get from having these specialized OSs, you can still run a lot of games on Xbox and PlayStation at 4K 120 with medium to high sort of graphic settings in games, even though they don't really give you an option to change those settings in the games on consoles. That's comparable to PC, whereas you try to run a PC game, an unoptimized PC game on the same specs, you often can't do that. 4K 120 hertz is not an easily achievable thing on PC. You do need the best graphics cards to do that. $1,500 graphics cards to get 4K 120 at medium to high graphics with a smooth 120. So yeah, there are some hurdles there that Microsoft needs to sort of navigate, and so we'll see what goes on.
Someone's asking, is the Flex keyboard really much better than the standard signature version? 450 pounds is giving me palpitations. Yeah, it is expensive, no doubt about it.
It is also
I,
great.
it's fantastic. I would say go buy it. If you think we're wrong, return it. But here's the 4 reasons, and I put this in my review, that because the Flex keyboard was the biggest surprise for me when I was reviewing it. I didn't when they announced that. They gave us things I didn't know I wanted. So for one, it has a haptic touchpad, which is done by in conjunction with Sensel, and it's amazing. It's such a better touchpad than the standard version, especially since you can kind of configure how much it clicks and all that kind of stuff. It's just a really good one. Um, 2, it has the pen slot, so you're going to have the pen there, always available. Before it was hidden. What they did before was clever, the way it like hid behind the keyboard when it was up against the display, made sure it never came out. But it meant you always had to pull your keyboard down with 2 hands and then grab the pen. This now, the pen's always exposed. The other thing, of course, is you can use it wirelessly. Now, I don't use this feature a ton, but it's neat that it can do it. What I mean is it has its own battery and Bluetooth, and you can pull it away from the Surface, put the Surface on a counter, and then put the keyboard in your lap and use it like that. It's instant, it's fast, and it just works really well. Oh, and it's also because of the battery and its design. It's not even like really heavier. It is slightly, but not like noticeable. But because of that, it's sturdier. So if you never really liked the flex of the keyboards before, like when you push down in it, this really doesn't have it because it has a thin battery in it that really kind of keeps it stiff. So those are like 4 reasons that just made it an overall better keyboard than the other one. So there's no doubt it's expensive, but of all that stuff, I think when you do that, you'll get the really full experience of the Surface Pro. But if you're not going to use the pen, then the pen dock is definitely less of a selling point, right? I would say the touchpad is always a selling point. And if you don't think you'll ever use the keyboard wirelessly, it's also not that big of a deal. But it's also one of those features where like you don't know if you want it because it was never really available. So you don't know if you'd use it. So, maybe keep an open mind to that, but it depends on your workflow. But I think it's great. So,
Do you get Microsoft Complete coverage when you buy Surface hardware? Worth it? I never have, but I have definitely been in scenarios where I wish I did. I have in the past dropped a Surface Laptop 3, which had I had accidental damage coverage, I could have just fixed up and then got a new one, but I didn't. To be fair, that's rare, and I've never actually needed it outside of that one scenario. Yeah, I mean, I'm a rare case, I guess. I've never had any technical problems with Surface devices outside of like the 30-day return window that you usually, or 60 days in regards to Surface on the Microsoft Store. Outside of that, so like I've never, once that return window closes, I'm usually able to use the device for as long as I want until I'm ready to upgrade. Just out of the laptop being just slow because it's out of date.
biggest issue I had was a couple of years, but it was many years ago, probably at least 8 years ago. I had a couple of dead pixels on one I just bought, but that was back with the Microsoft stores. And you could just walk back in and they swapped it out with not a problem.
Yeah.
RIP. Speaking of RIP, is the Surface Duo lineup dead? Yes.
Breaking news. Duo is dead.
Yeah. They're not making phones. Do you think there'll be any big surprises at the 50th anniversary event? I think, well, obviously it's subjective, right? I think there'll be some, because whatever is a new announcement could be a surprise, right? So it's technically yes, but I know what you're saying. Like, is there going to be like something like really big announced? I think the really big thing is what Zac has ruined, which is the new Surfaces. I think that would have been the big surprise. But now, if you listen to our podcast and follow our coverage, you're going to be like, there were no big surprises, right? So that's a little frustrating, I imagine, for Microsoft and other people. But I don't think there's going to be necessarily anything else, but there definitely could be. We honestly don't know. They've never had a 50th anniversary, right? So who knows how big they're going with this? But like I said, they've been quiet on some things lately, so maybe they're saving it up.
Here's what I'll say. I'll say if Microsoft announces a web-first or phone. Yeah, if Microsoft announces a web first AI OS that runs web apps and streams Windows apps from the cloud and has this agentic copilot that can reach in and edit apps and whatever it is you may want to do with it, that will be the big surprise that I just ruined. I don't know if they will announce it. To be fair, they might announce some of the Windows 11 stuff, but I don't know if they're ready to announce NXT, which is the sort of web OS, Chrome OS competitor thing, which is the true sort of next gen AI OS that they've sort of conceptualized internally. Or yeah, right, as Dan said, Windows 11 Mobile would also very much be a surprise. Yeah, I can't imagine. That would be. It'd be insane. That would be. Yeah, they won't do it. I would bet my house that they won't announce a phone next week. Has Microsoft announced if they will allow GPU cards like my 4070 to gain access to Copilot Plus AI features? They have not, and I don't think this is going to change. Microsoft is pushing hard on the whole NPU thing, and they want every chip maker to be including it NPUs, and immediately allowing GPUs to jump in on the fun would sort of ruin that. Because let's look at Intel and AMD. Even they're struggling to get NPUs to where they need to be to support Copilot Plus right now. These Intel Core Ultra series. Is it the V series? I can't remember what it's called now, but some of those chips don't even have an NPU that can do it, which is just absurd to me. So no, I don't see that happening yet. Does Snapdragon run STEM apps / programs? Rubino / Bowden always ignores this large market of laptop users. STEM, as in like, what is there just one STEM app? I don't know what you're asking here. I have not tested all of the STEM apps. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I mean, if we had specific.
Yeah, if you want to, we can certainly try them. But if you give us a list of names of apps you want us to try, we can certainly try running them. I mean, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know. I don't see why they wouldn't, based just a quick look at. I typed STEM apps into Google, sorry, Bing, and yeah, based on what I'm looking at here, I don't see why they wouldn't run. But there might be something going on there where they don't run. But I don't know because I've not tried. Do you think Microsoft would ever integrate reminders in the To-Do app with Copilot like it was with Cortana? Well, maybe. But the thing with this is sort of ties back into some of the stuff I'm hearing in regards to this sort of next-gen Copilot, this agentic Copilot. I think the goal is for Copilot to just be able to do those things for you without needing to talk to APIs. The idea that you can say, "Hey, Copilot, can you remind me? Add a reminder to the To-Do app, which is XYZ." It should be able to just go into the app and do that for you, even without showing you the app on screen. It should just be able to do that invisibly. This idea that these AI assistants will be able to interact with apps on your behalf is something we're going to see a lot more of in the next year or 2 years. That's sort of where this next gen AI assistant stuff is going in operating systems. And so you might not necessarily need like an API system or a plugin system to enable that. It could just be based on visual intelligence. The idea, the AI looks at the screen, looks at the app, looks at the interface, is able to use its intelligence to sort of figure out where it would need to go in the app to achieve said goal. So that's what I think might see instead of this more sort of API-based integration. Because the problem with relying on APIs and plugins is that it requires developers to support it. And as we all know, developers don't do that. they don't like supporting things unless it's Apple. And so let's try and reduce our reliance on APIs and developers needing to build support for things like that. Because at the end of the day, it usually either if it comes in a poor state or it doesn't come at all. If we can't use a GPU for AI features, we'll be able to purchase an NPU add-in card for desktop PCs. This is a question that keeps coming up, and I've not been in a situation where I can ask Microsoft directly. Hopefully next week when Dan goes to the event, maybe he'll get some face-to-face time with Microsoft
I mean,
VR.
Lenovo had a mini PC that had a separate NPU made by some company I've not heard of. So I think that tech is coming, but I don't know of any others that are, So yeah, it's an interesting. I don't know what the plan is there for that stuff, but you would hope there would be.
All right, final call for questions, then we will probably be heading off. Dan, do you use the Bing app or Edge on mobile?
I use Edge all the time on mobile. I got away from the Bing app, what was Start, the news apps. I found them a little bit annoying. I also will be honest, I've said this before, I thought Samsung's new inbox apps, what they've been doing, have been really good. I use Samsung's weather app, which I find fantastic, especially for free. And I like Samsung News, to be honest, too. I think it's they did a really good job with it. So I've been using those instead. But otherwise, I do use Edge as my default browser, and Copilot I use like all the time, just for. So I don't use like Edge necessarily for search anymore, right? Because I feel like web searches are weird at this point. I just go right into Copilot.
Okay, I think we're going to call it there for questions. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back. We'll see about next week. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.